Welcome to the Dwig America podcast. And now your host, Todd Dwiggins.
Welcome to the Dwig America podcast. I am your host, Todd Dwiggins, coming to you live from the Dwig America studio here in lovely Central Texas. Thank you again. Today's podcast, it's been a while. I'll admit it has been quite a while since I've had one. And you'll have to excuse me if there's some pauses in here. I have a bit of a cough. Allergies down here in Texas can be brutal, and mine is a persistent cough. So I'll have to go back. And edit all that out. Anyway, so on today's podcast, I thought I would talk about, I try to always be positive. That was my whole thing about making a podcast. I didn't like negative podcasts or negative, what do you want to call it? Points of view and such. I like positive people and positive thinking, so that's why I did the podcast. But today's, I'm not going to say it's negative. I'm going to talk about reasons I root for my teams. So the baseball playoffs are going on right now. And I should also preface by saying baseball is my number one favorite sport, hands down. The reasons why is, one, I think it has the history behind it. It's been around since about the Civil War. So it's been around a long time. It has tons of history to it. And I'm a history guy, so that appeals to my nature. I like that it's a kind of a methodical sport, and there's pauses in the action, but each pitch changes the situation. And anyway, there's a lot of thinking. It's a very cerebral game, if I could talk. Cerebral game. I enjoy that part of it. So that's my favorite sport by far. I like all the other sports. My least favorite major sport is probably in the NBA. I don't really care for basketball, professional basketball. It's not fun for me to watch. March Madness basketball, college basketball, that's cool. I like hockey. I like Formula One. I like football to a point. But anyway, so kind of a sports theme today. I thought I would talk a little bit about why I root for the teams I root for, because I'm always interested in the psychology of why people do what they do. Now, there are some people that root, and I'm kind of in that group. I think you root for the home team. I grew up in Indiana, and the only major sports teams we had when I was really young was the Indiana Pacers. I think that was the only what you would call major league team we had, high-level sports. Then we got the Indianapolis Colts came in when I was in high school. And I kind of started rooting for the Colts. Well, when I was really young, before the Colts ever came to town, I rooted for the Dallas Cowboys because, one, I liked their helmets. I thought that star was so cool. I thought their coach was cool, Tom Landry with his little fedora hat. I liked their quarterback, Roger Staubach. He was a Navy guy. I thought that was cool. And there was just a lot of stuff about the Cowboys that had this aura about them that I really liked when I was younger. But then the Colts came to town when I was in high school, and they were terrible. They were awful. And so I thought, you know what? No one's going to root for the Colts. They're terrible. I will root for the Colts because no one else is going to root for the Colts. And this is obviously well before Peyton Manning came to town and changed the perception of the Colts forever. Anyway, so that was one thing. I thought, I'm going to pick the Colts because they're terrible. And if they ever do well, I can say I rooted for them because I've always rooted for them when they stunk or whatever. When I was really young, I rooted for, in baseball, I rooted for the Cincinnati Reds. That was back in the Big Red Machine with Johnny Bench and Pete Rose and Dave Foster and Dave Concepcion and Joe Morgan. The Big Red Machine, and they were fairly close. They were about 3 hours from our house. The first major sport event I remember going to was a Cincinnati Reds game when I was really young, 5 or 6. So I was really into the Reds. And I remember asking my dad once, who's your favorite team? Who's your favorite baseball team? And he said the Cubs. And I was like, the Cubs? And I had a lot of friends that liked the Cubs, but I couldn't figure out why my dad liked the Cubs. I thought we were Reds fans, but he said, no, I've always liked the Cubs. They were always on the radio. They were on WGN on TV. And so I'd watch a lot of Cubs games because they were on WGN. So as I got a little older, I kind of turned my loyalty to the Chicago Cubs. And I followed them really strongly until about when I got married. And I moved to Milwaukee, and I got a 15-game, whatever you want to call it, 15-game season ticket pack for the Brewers because it was relatively cheap. And I always, as a baseball fan, as a kid, it was always my dream to sort of have those kind of tickets, even if it was just 15 games, but kind of have tickets to a Major League Baseball team. And so that first year, it was the last year the Brewers were in County Stadium, which they'd been in since like the 50s. And they were closing it down. They were opening a new baseball park there. And as I remember I went to a couple of games where the Cubs were playing because I thought I'm going to go, watch the Cubs. That's my team. And what happened was, I guess Chicago is only about an hour and a half from Milwaukee. So a lot of these Cubs fans would come up to Milwaukee to watch the Cubs play because it was easier ticket than getting one to Wrigley Field. But they were so obnoxious and so annoying. And that kind of turned me off the Cubs. And then I was still a Cubs fan. And then there's the famous Bartman year. So everyone knows the Bartman year when basically it wasn't his fault, but the Cubs choked away a chance to go to the World Series. And it made me so mad that I thought, you know what, I'm done with the Cubs. I'm sick of rooting for a team every year that just lets you down. And they don't care because people are just they have a strong fan base and you can be good or you can be terrible and you're still going to sell out your ballpark and make a lot of money off people. And I just thought there was no motivation for them to do well. So I kind of thought, you know what, you don't care about me as a fan, and the fans that come up to Milwaukee are annoying. I'm going to root for this little Milwaukee team because they're not going to let me down. They don't have a huge fan base. And so I thought, that'll be a team I can just watch and enjoy and not stress out about. So when they have success, it's awesome. And when they don't, it's okay because no one expects them to do well anyway. They get ignored. So I kind of like having that as my team that I can root for. And the fan base there in Milwaukee is strong and passionate, but I don't think they're rude like those other fans. But when the Cubs did end up winning the World Series, I was excited and happy for the Cubs because a little bit of that childhood came back to me where I was like, that's so cool to see them win finally. But it would mean more to me for the Brewers to win a World Series now than for the Cubs. But whatever, I wish them well. I just wish the fans that came up to Milwaukee weren't so obnoxious and rude. And that was coming from someone that was a Cubs fan. I just thought, man, you're annoying. So that's why I root for my Brewers. Now the playoffs are going on right now, and my Brewers got knocked off by the Washington Nationals, which I was disappointed, but I don't really have a what do you call it? I don't have a dislike for the Nationals. I actually kind of always liked them. They kind of have a history of not doing too well in the playoffs either. So again, not too disappointed by the team that beat the Brewers. So then it's Brewers. No, sorry. Wishful thinking. It's the Nationals. We're in the NLDS against the Dodgers, with the winner will move on to the National League Championship Series. So I would pick based on how I look at things, I would pick the Nationals because they don't have a history of success in the playoffs. And I don't like the Dodgers because a couple of things, and they kind of are both together. The Dodgers are one of these big city teams with lots of money, lots of resources, and I don't like teams that I feel like can try to buy a championship. That's why I like my Brewers. There's no way the Brewers can buy a championship. They just have to make do with, a couple of really good players, but then they have to just have everybody else perform above their heads. And there's more charm to that, I think, than these teams that, like the Yankees, same thing. Don't like the Yankees. So I picked the Nationals. Now, some people say, well, the Nationals are a big-time team. They have a lot of big-time players. But, again, they don't have the history of success. So I kind of root for the underdog, and I just don't like the Dodgers. Sorry. I love the Dodgers uniforms. They have a cool history. But once I think this got bought by this new ownership group, and then they started getting all this extra income and influx of money. Just money to me ruins it. But you'll see maybe a little bit later that I can be a hypocrite that way when it comes to my sports teams. So anyway, then the other side of the National League is the Cardinals versus the Cardinals were playing the Braves. I definitely picked the Braves of the two. As a Brewers fan, if you know anything about the Brewers, there's no way you would ever root for the Cardinals. They have a great fan base and all that, a lot of great history too. But just on principle, no way I could root for the Cardinals. I think even my father was like, when I was younger, he was like, I can't stand the Cardinals. And he was a Cubs fan, so that goes together. So I think it's where Cubs and Brewers fans can actually join together and agree. Can't root for the Cardinals. So I had to root for the Braves, but the Braves got smoked in Game 5. And so it's going to be Cardinals versus Nationals, and I'm definitely picking the Nationals over the Cardinals for this one. Again, same reasons I've stated before for the Nationals. In the American League, it's the Astros versus the Rays. Now, here's my reasons for rooting for the Astros. Obviously, I live here in Texas now, so I have an affinity for Texas teams. I like Justin Verlander. I think he's a dominant, cool pitcher. So I like him. I like the whole team, Jose Altuve and the whole bunch. So there's an affinity for Houston. The Rays will always be an expansion team to me. I'm sure there's older people that think like the Brewers are an expansion team because they came in 1970, if they're older. But I'm sorry, I can't root. And Tampa Bay, like there's no fan base there. It's just, I can't root. The only thing that's good about Tampa Bay is they have one of our players from the Brewers that got traded, Jesus Aguilar, fan favorite, got traded to Tampa Bay. So I would be happy for Jesus Aguilar. But honestly, I just don't like Tampa Bay. Never could. So that's why I'm rooting for the Astros. So then my ideal situation would be Astros versus Nationals. And, you'll have to talk to me then about who I'm going to root for. A lot of things, a lot of reasons for both to root for both teams. Haven't really thought about who I would root for. I think right now, I don't know. I think I would root for the Astros, but I'm not sure. We'll have to see. It has to get there first. Cards Yankees would be my nightmare scenario. The Yankees wiped out the Twins in the first round. I would have rooted for the Twins, obviously, in the first round. I love the Yankees' history, their uniforms, Gehrig, Ruth, Mantle, DiMaggio, the whole history, love it. Just don't like the Yankees, the New York team. who knows? If I lived in New York, maybe I'd change my tune, but I don't. So that's my reasoning why I root for who I root for and who I'm rooting for now in the playoffs. I already talked about football. I'm a Colts fan for the reasons that they were so terrible, and I rooted for the underdog. I do have a question. Who roots for the Patriots that doesn't live in New England? Like, why would you root for the Patriots? That's another one of those big money teams that, I don't know. I understand why people don't like the Cowboys now that I'm older. I know why people don't like the Cowboys. I know why people don't like the Patriots. But if you don't live there, why would you root for the Patriots? I'm sorry. I can admire their organization and how they do things, but to me, also I think they're cheaters. But that's another story. I don't want to get in an argument with anybody. I just don't like them. Now, the one sport that I'm like a total hypocrite about, the underdog and all that, and most people don't watch it anyway, so no one would really care who I root for, is Formula One racing. And I like Lewis Hamilton. He drives for Mercedes. Now, Mercedes is like one of the big, they're like the New York Yankees. Them and Ferrari are like the New York Yankees, Boston Red Sox, Dodgers of Formula One. Mercedes has dominated the last 3-4 years. So a lot of people find that boring, but I just think Lewis Hamilton is just an amazing driver. I rooted for him when he was with McLaren. Then he went to Mercedes and he's dominated there. And they have the most money, the most resources. So everything I hate about big money is what they are. But you know what? I guess I have to have one sport that I have a team that's dominant, because my Colts have never really been dominant. I mean, they had Peyton Manning and they won a Super Bowl, went to 2 Super Bowls, but they were never dominant. They were good. That's really all I'm looking forward to. Again, my Brewers have never been dominant. The Cubs never were dominant. But so that's my one sport, Formula One. I root for Lewis Hamilton. He's an Englishman, so that's as close to an American we can get. So I don't even know if I'd root for an American. I just think Lewis Hamilton's an amazing driver. So it's fun to watch that. I'd like to go to Austin to the Grand Prix sometime this year, next year. Don't know if I'll get to, but that would be an amazing thing to do. So that's my thoughts. That is my one sports talk podcast that I will do. Maybe I'll do another one if there's a reason. But I thought, you know what? Why do people root? Why do you root for who you root for? Is it just because it's a home team? Is there something particular about a team that you like? Like if it's the Patriots, why? And you don't live in New England, why do you root for the Patriots? Is it just that you enjoy excellence, sort of like me with Lewis Hamilton? I mean, there's lots of reasons. I'm always curious the reasons why, or if you're just a bandwagon front runner on board with the team that dominates, which that's your business. So thanks for listening to this edition of the Dwig America podcast. It's been several months since I've done one, but I thought, you know what? Finally, I have something to talk about that I think I have something to say about and is of interest to me. So I thought, yeah, let's make one. It's been a while, and so hopefully enjoyed it. So until next time, whatever that may be, wherever that may be, give me a shout out at dwigamerica@gmail.com if you have questions, comments, complaints, and give me a shout out, say hello, comment if you have any subjects or something you'd like me to talk about, guests you'd like me to have, because that's my goal someday, is to have like guests, so this isn't just a one-way conversation. So until next time, thanks for listening, and so long, everybody.